We're going to do a glue up of two flat pieces. This is the quickest way to getting a thicker piece of material when you need it. Now, ideally, your pieces that you glue up are going to be entirely flat. That's not always the case. In the case that there is a little bit of curvature to the boards, like you can see here, you want the curvature to be facing away from each other where possible. That, in other words, the opposite of this, so that they're bending out. If you can see that, because in this case, and you'll see in a minute, when we clamp it, it will have the effect of squeezing it together correctly and canceling the curvature out. So how much glue? Well, the amount of mayo that goes on a Japanese pancake. Just enough to cover both surfaces. And then I have a little putty knife here. You can use the edge of another piece of wood or cardboard or anything just flat. Making sure that you're pushing the glue to the edges. Now, I'm actually going to add a little bit more. And you do want glue on both sides, because that'll make sure that you get rid of any gaps or spots you missed. All right. Feeling pretty good about that. You only have a couple minutes to work with the glue, so if you're doing a lot of layers, you might have to do it in chunks. I'm going to bring them together and go ahead and throw one clamp on, tack it into place. Now, you may have to, depending on how accurate you want your pieces to be matched to each other, it always helps to glue something up before you cut it down to size. In other words, if this is the final size and dimensions of this thick piece I want, it's better to do the gluing first on pieces that are too big and then cut the glued up object down, because it's actually quite difficult to get perfect alignment of two layers without anything or any sanding needed. You can try. You will just, suffer needlessly sometimes. In a glue up like this, once both sides are glued and wet, they want to kind of slide against each other because it's lubed. So you can do things like take a clamp and throw it on the edges to keep them in place. But I find that with enough clamps and a big enough workpiece, don't be shy. About the number of clamps you use or the pressure you apply to the edge. What you're looking for, ideally, is this kind of squeeze out. Just a little bead of glue, but a very consistent rim around the edge. And then while the glue is still wet, it is water soluble. So you can clean up excess squeeze out right away. This needs to sit ideally for 24 hours before you do anything with it on tools. You can unclamp it after 2, but you really want to wait for a whole day before you work it on anything else. Also, very importantly, you have to wait until the glue on a glue up is entirely dried to sand this or cut it on other tools, because as you've probably seen in the shop, the sanders can gum up very quickly when they're dealing with wet and not entirely dried glue. So an entire day of drying glue before you put it on the sanders.